What if the most magnetic quality you carry is not how much you give, but what you dare to refuse? A woman who has lived enough to know the weight of her own silence, the shape of her own solitude, learns that a well-placed boundary does not push love away. It invites only the kind that can stay. Perhaps you have noticed it yourself when you said yes too quickly. Respect slipped from the room. But when you stood firm, when you allowed the word no to fall calmly and without apology, suddenly the air changed. The gaze across from you became more careful, more attentive, almost unsettled by your clarity. That is the silent power of a boundary. Men, whether they admit it or not, read the refusal of a woman as a signal of value. A woman who does not over-explain, who does not drown her choice in long justifications, speaks the language of self-possession. Carl Jung once said that individuation, the process of becoming truly oneself, is the core journey of every human being. A clear limit is an external sign of this inner individuation. It is not a wall built from bitterness. It is a mirror reflecting a woman who knows who she is and what she will no longer surrender. In a world that often conditions women to yield, that simple act of saying no becomes a profound declaration of selfhood. Think of a moment in your life when you declined something that did not feel right. Perhaps it was a second date with a man whose attention felt shallow. Perhaps it was the late-night message that carried no commitment behind it. In those moments, your refusal was not just a dismissal, it was a choice to honor your own rhythm. And strangely, you may have noticed that instead of diminishing attraction, your clarity heightened it. Respect grew, even if interest did not. This is because authenticity, in its pure form, radiates a kind of magnetism that pretenses can never sustain. Boundaries are not punishments, they are signals. To the man who is not prepared for depth, they will feel heavy and restrictive, and he will drift away. But to the man who is ready, a boundary becomes a compass. It separates fleeting curiosity from genuine devotion. Jung's lens shows us that every relationship is a dance between projection and reality. When a woman says no, she dissolves illusions. She forces the man to see not just what he imagines, but who she truly is. That confrontation with reality either exposes his lack of readiness or awakens his respect. This is why a clear boundary saves energy. It stops the endless cycles of trying to prove yourself to someone who is never committed. It preserves your spirit from the erosion of being taken for granted. In the archetypal sense, the woman who guards her own thresholds embodies the guardian. She does not repel love. She protects the sacred space where real love can arrive. Her magnetism lies not in pleasing everyone, but in making space only for the ones who can meet her there. Imagine a quiet evening. The phone does not ring. The invitation you declined leaves a gap in the night. You may wonder if you were too harsh, too selective. Yet that silence is not emptiness. It is protection. It is the clearing of ground so that one day what is planted can grow without being trampled. Saying no is not a loss. It is a form of self-care disguised as firmness. And men who carry maturity sense this difference. They know that boundaries are not walls. They are doors that require respect to be opened. When a woman lives with this clarity, she does not vanish into the desires of another. She remains distinct, vibrant, whole. And paradoxically, it is that wholeness that draws others in. Boundaries, then, are not about distance. They are about gravity. They make you magnetic because they reveal the truth. You are not desperate for attention. You are choosing carefully, and choice is the root of respect. Perhaps the most powerful truth is this: a boundary is not only a refusal to another, it is an embrace of yourself. To say no calmly is to say yes to your essence. To honor your space is to honor your worth. The woman who understands this no longer fears rejection. She knows that what leaves her life was never meant to stay, and what remains does so by choice, not by accident. And that is the kind of love that grows not from sacrifice, but from recognition. A true boundary is not only a statement of refusal, it is also a natural filter. When you place it gently yet firmly, something remarkable happens. The men who were seeking convenience rather than connection quietly disappear. They are not destroyed by your clarity, they are simply revealed by it. In this way, a boundary works like a sieve, separating the substance of real intimacy from the sand of temporary amusement. Jung would describe this as the psyche defending its own wholeness. To say no to what is shallow is to say yes to what is deep. Many women carry the ache of wondering why someone pulled away after they dared to draw a line. It feels personal, as if the act of self-respect cost them affection. Yet the truth is different. The man who recoils at a limit was never prepared for mature love. He wanted access, not presence. He sought comfort without responsibility. A limit only reveals the truth sooner, sparing you from years of silent depletion. If he goes, let him go, because what left was only illusion, not devotion. Consider the difference between interest and convenience. Interest pursues you with consistency, seeks to know you, and respects your rhythm. Convenience appears when it pleases him, takes what is easy, and vanishes at the first sign of effort. A boundary makes this contrast visible. It shines a light where shadows once hid, showing clearly who stands with you and who only leaned on you. Without limits, you risk spending years giving energy to men who were never truly there. With limits, you protect the reservoir of your spirit for the rare connection that is worth it. Jung's archetypes give us another lens here. The guardian is not a figure of coldness, but of sacred stewardship. She tends to her inner world as one tends to a garden. The fence around her heart is not barbed wire, it is a living hedge that protects blossoms still opening. This archetype embodies the understanding that not every visitor deserves entry. Only those who approach with patience and reverence are welcomed inside. And in that act of guarding, paradoxically, lies her greatest magnetism. She does not chase, she chooses. She does not demand, she selects. And choice is what makes her glow. Imagine standing at the door of your own life, hand on the handle, listening. Outside there may be voices, some loud, some soft. Not all are meant to enter. The ones who leave because they cannot cross your threshold are doing you a quiet favor. They spare you the pain of discovering too late that they never intended to stay. Boundaries, in this sense, are timekeepers. They save you from wasting months, years, even decades on connections that could never honor your essence. They give back what is most precious: time, energy, and dignity. Think also of the emotional cycles women over 40 know too well, the patterns of giving more than they receive, of bending until they nearly break, of hoping that one day the man will notice the effort. A boundary interrupts these cycles. It says, enough. It says, my love is not cheap. And it does so without bitterness, only with clarity. That clarity itself becomes magnetic. Because while one man may leave, another will notice the strength in your stance and feel drawn closer, not further away. Jung's theory of individuation suggests that every limit you set is an outer reflection of an inner alignment. When you honor yourself in this way, you are no longer at the mercy of external approval. You are acting from the deep ground of your own psyche. And that groundedness has a quiet power men can sense. Some will run from it, fearing what it demands of them. Others will stay, feeling that here, finally, is a woman who knows her worth. So the question is not, will a boundary push him away? The question is, what does his response to your boundary reveal about his readiness? If he withdraws, the truth is unveiled. If he leans in with respect, then you have witnessed the beginning of something real. Either way, you have not lost. You have filtered. You have preserved your energy for what is true. And in that preservation lies the profound magnetism of a woman who values her own life enough to protect it. There is a difference between opening your heart and dissolving into someone else. Many women confuse intimacy with fusion, believing that to be loved, they must give up the contours of who they are. Yet the woman who keeps her own shape, her passions, her friendships, her voice, becomes infinitely more magnetic. A man may enjoy temporary control over someone who bends too easily, but admiration is born in the presence of someone who stands firm in her identity. Jung would describe this as the healthy balance of anima and animus, the feminine and masculine energies within us, complementing but never consuming one another. When a woman loses herself in another, attraction eventually fades, not because she has less love to give, but because her essence becomes blurred. Desire thrives in clarity, not confusion. Think of it as music. Harmony arises not when one instrument drowns the other, but when each keeps its own note while joining the symphony. In relationships, the most magnetic women are those who play their own melody, even as they allow a man's presence to add depth to the composition. What keeps that individuality alive are often micro-habits, seemingly small choices that maintain a sense of self within love. Continuing a morning walk alone, refusing to abandon a book club that nourishes the mind, holding firm to the ritual of journaling before bed, each of these is a quiet declaration. I am with you, but I am still me. These habits create a rhythm of independence within togetherness. And men, though they may not articulate it, sense this rhythm as both challenge and allure. A woman who cannot be completely absorbed becomes a mystery that never fades. Consider the magnetism of a woman who does not rush to answer every message, not out of games, but because her life is full and rich. She may be preparing a meal that matters to her health, or she may be immersed in work that carries meaning. Her attention, when given, feels deliberate, not obligatory. That energy of deliberateness tells a man, your presence is chosen, not owed. And that difference creates an atmosphere of respect rather than entitlement. Jung's concept of individuation teaches that wholeness comes not from merging into another, but from integrating the many sides of oneself. When a woman lives this integration, she no longer fears that saying no, asking for space, or pursuing her own interests will drive someone away. She understands that what leaves was never hers, and what remains does so by resonance, not by force. This realization frees her from the exhausting cycle of trying to maintain connection through self-erasure. There is also an unspoken admiration men feel for a woman who guards her individuality. She becomes someone they cannot fully predict, someone who has an inner world too vast to be controlled. In a way, this stirs the masculine psyche into growth. Jung noted that the anima, the inner feminine within men, draws them toward wholeness. A woman who embodies her individuality awakens this archetype. She becomes not only a partner, but also a mirror that invites a man to explore his own depth. This is why the woman who refuses to be lost in another often inspires more devotion than the one who sacrifices everything for connection. Imagine sitting at a cafe alone, savoring your coffee, unhurried. To the outside eye, it may seem ordinary, but to the mature man who notices, it is deeply magnetic. It says, here is someone who does not fear her own company. Here is someone who carries herself whole, whether or not she is accompanied. That image plants respect before desire, and where respect exists, desire endures. So the magnetism of a woman who does not lose herself in love lies not in resistance, but in presence. She is open, yet intact, giving, yet guarded, vulnerable, yet rooted. Her boundaries are not barriers to intimacy. They are frames that highlight her essence. And it is precisely this essence, preserved and shining, that turns her presence into something unforgettable. A true boundary is not a wall that shuts love out, but a door that asks a question. Are you ready to enter with respect? For men who have matured emotionally, the presence of limits is not a threat. It is an invitation. A woman who knows how to stand firm teaches, without ever preaching, that love without respect is only appetite, and appetite fades. Jung often pointed to the necessity of growth through confrontation with the self. In this sense, a woman's no, or her insistence on clarity, becomes the mirror in which a man sees his own readiness or lack of it. There is a quiet strength in a woman who does not apologize for her standards. To some men, this feels like rejection, but to others, it feels like revelation. They recognize that such a woman is not rejecting them, but challenging them to rise. The boundary becomes a catalyst for self-reflection. It forces him to ask whether he can offer more than convenience, whether he is willing to step into the responsibility of real partnership. In that way, limits are not barriers, but initiations into deeper love. Consider the difference between two men. One withdraws when you say, "You will not accept late-night visits with no commitment." He sees the limit as an obstacle. Another hears the same words and adjusts his behavior, not because he is coerced, but because he recognizes the value of what you guard. This is the silent test boundaries create. They separate the man who wishes to consume from the man who wishes to build. The limit itself does not destroy connection. It refines it. It strengthens the bond because it clarifies expectations and makes mutual respect the foundation. This dynamic echoes the archetype of the king in Jungian thought. A true king does not seek a partner who bows without question. He seeks a queen who challenges him, who reminds him of his higher nature, who demands that he rule himself before he rules beside her. Boundaries call forth that archetype in men who are prepared. They awaken his desire to be more than he was yesterday, not for approval, but for alignment. In this sense, a woman's firmness is not only protective of herself, it is transformative for the relationship. Think of a time you stood your ground and noticed how a man responded. Did he grow silent, defensive, dismissive? Or did he lean closer, seeking to understand? The reaction itself was the answer. Some men are not yet able to meet you at the level your boundaries require. Others will see in those boundaries the very reason to stay. Because a relationship that cannot hold respect is already fragile, while one that grows through limits becomes resilient. Boundaries also create trust. A man who knows where you stand does not need to guess at your hidden resentments. He may not always agree, but he can relax into the certainty that what you say is what you mean. This kind of clarity is rare and magnetic. It signals maturity, and it inspires it in return. A relationship where limits are spoken and honored becomes a place of safety, not a battlefield of unspoken disappointments. The magnetism of limits, then, is not about resistance, but about invitation. They invite the man to step into maturity, to match presence with presence, to build love on ground that will not collapse. They invite you to hold your essence without apology. And when both meet at that threshold, what begins is not control, but communion. A woman who embraces her boundaries does not shrink her love. She expands its worth. She offers not easy access, but sacred partnership. And the men who are ready will not fear that. They will honor it. They will understand that what she protects is not distance, but the very space where true intimacy can live. There comes a moment when a boundary is no longer seen as a defense, but as a form of love for oneself. To choose respect before affection is to affirm that affection without respect was never love to begin with. A woman who carries herself this way radiates a different kind of magnetism, one that draws not through constant giving, but through the calm authority of self-honor. Jung would say that this is the psyche aligning with its own essence, refusing to betray itself for the comfort of another. When you say no to what diminishes you, you are saying yes to your life. When you refuse a connection that feeds on your silence, you are creating space for a connection that breathes with your truth. This is not arrogance, it is clarity, and clarity is magnetic. It communicates without need for lengthy words that you will not sell your essence for fleeting attention. The man who can meet you here will feel steadiness in your presence. He will know that if you choose him, it is not out of fear of solitude, but from the abundance of your self-respect. Boundaries, when lived this way, inspire trust. They tell others that your love is not impulsive, not desperate, not given out of loneliness. It is deliberate, rooted in values, and protected by the quiet power of discernment. And that kind of love feels safe, even to those who approach it cautiously. Because when a woman honors herself first, those who stay beside her learn to honor her too. She teaches by presence, not by lecture. That love without respect is an illusion she no longer accepts. Sometimes the most magnetic expressions of boundaries are small rituals of self-care. Choosing to spend an evening alone in peace rather than in company that drains you. Turning off the phone after hours, not out of coldness, but because your rest matters. Saying no to conversations that spiral into disrespect, even if it means walking away. Each act becomes symbolic, a ritual of prioritizing dignity. These moments accumulate, shaping an aura that is felt before it is seen. Men who carry maturity notice it, and those who do not are naturally kept at a distance. Jung's conclusion is that individuation, becoming fully oneself, is the deepest calling of the soul. A woman who honors her limits is not closing doors. She is opening the only door that matters, the one to her own essence. From this place, she does not fear solitude, because solitude no longer feels empty. It feels whole. She does not fear rejection, because she knows that what leaves was never aligned with her essence. And she does not fear aging, because her magnetism is no longer bound to the surface of youth, but to the depth of selfhood. The magnetism of boundaries is not about making men chase. It is about becoming so clear within yourself that only those who can match that clarity remain. It is about understanding that attraction without respect fades, but attraction rooted in admiration grows stronger with time. When you live from this truth, you stop negotiating your worth. You begin to draw connections that are lighter, freer, more honest. So perhaps the greatest transformation is this. The woman who once feared that boundaries would cost her love discovers that they are the very thing that protects it. By honoring her own edges, she turns rejection into revelation, solitude into sanctuary, and love into something worthy of her essence. Maybe today is the day to ask yourself, where have I softened my no when my soul whispered yes to it? Where have I allowed affection to silence respect? And what would shift if, from now on, you treated every boundary not as a wall, but as a vow to yourself? The truth is simple. The woman who honors her limits honors her life, and that life, whole and unwavering, becomes irresistibly magnetic.